J. Brown, Shine Rise Radio. I'm just going to go ahead and make sure it blinked. Good morning. This is Jeff J. Brown, China Rise Radio, Sinoland in Chiang Mai, Thailand. And I am really happy to have another outstanding interview today with Rainer Shea. How are you doing, Rainer?
Oh, hi. I was intrigued when I heard you wanted to have me on the podcast because I find you intriguing. Apparently, you're living in China and you're spreading the message of the CCP.
Yeah. Well, my wife and I moved to Thailand in September, so that because the cost of living is cheaper, and after 16 years in China, we wanted a different perspective on Asia. But of course, I follow. In fact, I'm going to be going back to China before Christmas, so to spend 5 days up there in Beijing. So yeah, we'll be going back often. I'm really honored to have you on the show today, and I would like to thank Patrice Granville, editor-in-chief of the Greenville Post, for putting us in touch. Let me just give you a brief introduction about Rainer. He is a blogger and YouTuber who discusses communism and anti-imperialism. He particularly focuses on Asian socialist experiments like the ones in the People's Republic of China and Democratic People's Republic of Korea. And for those of you who don't know, that's the official name for North Korea. I've been reading Rainer's articles for a while and signed up for his email newsletter to follow his work. You're not a reader? He has a YouTube channel as well. And I watched a couple of his videos and really enjoyed them. I'm going to be including his email, his Skype, his website, his Twitter, and his YouTube channel. So he welcomes you to get in touch with him and exchange information and ideas. So welcome to the show, Rainer.
Yeah, I'm glad to be on.
Hey, listen, here's the first question. I always ask this of people who have gone through a transformation during their life. Please tell us about yourself, a little bit about who you are and your arc of awareness growing up about Western Empire, capitalism, and communism, socialism. Go ahead.
Well, like most people seemingly who grew up in the post 9/11 era, my adolescence included a dynamic where I became aware of a lot of the darker aspects of the world in terms of politics. I became aware of the Iraq War and the deceptions of our government and the American surveillance state, and the fact that my country has been at war since I was around 1 year old. And, yeah.
Go ahead. Yeah. Well, actually, we've been at war since 1607. They started killing the Native Americans the day they arrived at Plymouth Rock. So, yeah, you're right. It's just nonstop war. How did you, obviously within, communism, socialism, how did you specifically become a Marxist-Leninist?
Oh, well, that came out of a dynamic where, well, like around 2018, I definitely became a self-identified socialist. I stopped believing that capitalism could work, and I got and actually that's where Orwell factored in, where Orwell's stance against socialism helped win me over, but also Orwell misdirected me with Animal Farm,
Yeah.
and up till like last year, I was rereading Animal Farm for maybe the third time because I like the book and I agree with its message until I actually became educated about the history of the Soviet Union and how absurd Animal Farm's cartoon characterization of Stalin and Stalinism are. And I learned about the real history of Soviet Russia, and from their followed my education about the realities of the DPRK and China, and the DPRK and China are really or sort of the taboos of what you can support. A lot more of the time, it's acceptable for American socialists to support Cuba or Venezuela,
Mm-hmm.
but China and the DPRK have been the targets of intensive propaganda campaigns
Mm-hmm.
to attribute outrageous atrocities to them, and to generally characterize them as dictatorial and oppressive and not worth supporting. So I had to get out of that mentality, and it was fairly easy for me to get out of that mentality, because for years at that point I had already been studying the pervasiveness of war propaganda, and how easy it is to be fooled by the deceptions of American headlines, and the stories that the U.S. propaganda machine puts out. I was very educated about the ways that the CIA and the corporate media manipulates people's perceptions, which made me very open to learning about China and North Korea, and by extension communism.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Do you mind me? How old are you, Rainer?
19.
Wow, that's incredible. I went through the same, arc of awareness, but it didn't really start happening for me until 19 until we moved back to China in 2010 for the second time, and we were there from 1990 to 1997, and then then we moved back in 2010, and then just after 9 years, just moved to Thailand. But it wasn't until I came back in 2010. So I was 56, when I really started to catch on. And you're 19, so I'm really happy for you, and I've actually had people your age diss me, and well, older, people in their 20s and 30s, and go, oh, I caught on a lot earlier than you, but and what can I say? We all go through we all go through our arc of awareness, and at least better late than never. Let me just point out, I did interview Grover Furr, Grover, and his last name is Furr, Furr.
Yeah, I've heard of
Um,
it.
and his books about Stalin are incredible. And he also opened my eyes about all the, you cannot write a book or write an article in the West about Stalin unless you are a certified Stalin hater. Otherwise, you will not get published. I also, as far as Korea is concerned, I interviewed A.B. Abraham, and his book about Asia, and his coverage of North Korea and stuff. In fact, he went to school there and I think he got a degree in North Korea, so he speaks fluent Korean. So yeah, I'll put those two posts at the bottom of our article, so that and of course China. I've been writing about China since 2013. So well, anyway, how has your political awareness, or you're 19, you just publicly, you're on the record as being a Marxist Leninist, I would assume Maoist,
Yeah.
communist. How has this affected your daily life? I mean, family, friends, and work. I mean, people are really curious. They want to be more outspoken about their beliefs, but they're afraid. They're afraid of rejection and stuff. So, just honestly tell us, what's happened with mom and dad and friends and work.
Well, in terms of my parents, uh, there have been times when we've clashed, in that for for me to claim that China and North Korea are good has caused some offense, because the intuition of someone who's uh, who's gotten their news about these countries from standard headlines is that it would be offensive to like these countries. However, my parents have gotten more receptive to it as I've continued to uh, try to explain myself, and my parents really respect me for what I do and my learning advancement, and the same is the case for a lot of my extended relatives who well, a lot of them are right leaning, and they aren't going to be convinced by my pro communist arguments, but they do respect me for my for how much I've learned at this age, and
Well,
uh,
that's
yeah,
encouraging. Golly, because I've had some guests on the show where the mom and dad cut them off. They lose their friends, and so that's what about? Well, you're 19. I guess are you having to work or are you going to school? What are you doing
I
outside?
well
Outside, outside of being a truth teller, what are you doing for work or school?
I'm going to I'm taking several classes at local college right now,
Okay, okay,
and
good. All right,
yeah,
cool.
and that gives me some financial aid, and I've also got my Patreon, which gives
Yeah,
me
yeah, yeah, yeah. Your Petra,
yeah.
is it Patreon or Patreon? I have no
I don't
idea.
know. I don't care.
Yeah, I know you're actually getting some money from. I say Patreon. I have no idea. I need to go on YouTube and hear someone pronounce it. But yeah, you're actually getting people are following you and donating to your work, which is really admirable. So, well, let me ask you this: Have you joined a communist party? Why and why not?
I'm right now. I'm trying to join the Party for Socialism and Liberation, which I think is the best communist party in the United States, since it has the best organizational structure, and it has it also has some of the best theory, and also has a security culture, which makes it exclusive, and they have to vet you for months. So I haven't joined them yet, though I'm trying to join them. Uh, but I'm actually trying to join them because this year I came out of another party called the Socialist Party USA, and the Socialist Party USA showed that they don't respect me or the communist agenda or anti-imperialism, because they're in response to two articles, one about North Korea, one about China, that I published in their website, thesocialist.org. They issued a direct response to these articles that rebuked me and characterized China and North Korea as authoritarian, and they really went out of their way to reject these countries. So both me and the local activist group that I'm involved with
Oh,
have
so you have a
split from the
group.
Socialist
Wow,
Party
that's a
USA as a
oh.
result of this incident. Now we're moving towards the PSL.
PSL. I'll have to add party. Okay, after our interview, I'll ask you to send me the names of all this so I can include it. Yeah, the back after the CIA slash FBI slash deep state did a wonderful job of splintering the progressive left and the socialists and the communists into many different groups. So with sabotage and psychological operations and embedding agents into the parties to to destroy them from within. And so it sounds like this one that the PSL, they have to vet you, because if they don't vet you, then they're going to get infected with CIA slash FBI types to destroy them. And sounds like the Socialist Party of the USA is probably like a Trotskyite group, and Trotskyites can't stand China and North Korea.
They're mainly white anarchists.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Anyway,
or
at least the person.
anarchists, and
Yeah, at least in terms of their central leadership. They actually vary because they're decentralized, unlike the PSL. So they've got some Marxist-Leninists in the local groups, but their national committee is dominated by white anarchists.
Yeah, yeah. I have told my friends, fans, and followers out there of China Rising Radio Sinoland, for the last several years. I joined the Communist Party of France after we got, maybe like from 2000, I think maybe 2013, 2014, I joined. It has been completely, defanged. It's not the Communist Party it was, after World War II, but just out of respect for them and in hopes that they, kind of, catch on and to honor what they did do, before World War II and after. I'm a member of I'm a card carrying member of the Communist Party of France, but it's not the party that it used to be. Well, listen, how did you specifically come to be pro-China?
Oh, the transition took place this spring, earlier this year, when after believing the stories of the Chinese social credit system being sinister, sinister surveillance system, I was exposed to a different take by Ian Goodrum. You must know about him, who explained how their social credit system is actually it's really just a business regulation setup that helps them manage corruption better, and is not as nearly as severe as it's made out to be. And from there, as my communist ideology developed, I came to see China as an ally against U.S. imperialism, and ultimately for the development of worldwide socialism. As I learned about socialism with Chinese characteristics and how it's exporting or fostering the Chinese socialist model around the world. And as part of that, I continued to learn about how the stories we hear about China are false, like the Uyghur concentration camp claim, and the 1 million number, and and also the nuances about the nature of China's censorship and how that's exaggerated by headline trickery.
Well, impressive. Yeah, I've written about the social credit system, and I have always said, who risks opprobrium the most in China from the social credit system? It's businesses and corporations, and it really is designed to put pressure on the bad guys in the corporate world and the business world to play by the rules. And Also, yeah, Uyghurs. They're like training centers, vocational centers, etc. And then there's the organ harvesting. I mean, this is all just the vilest, the vilest of CIA, MI6, NGO, Soros, Omidyar, NGO, just blatant psyops and propaganda. Well, listen, do you think there's hope for shifting public opinion? And I'm sorry, what attitudes towards China among socialists in your home country in the United States? How do your fellow socialists look at China?
It's a real mix, because like me, a lot of people have come towards the China issue with the intuition towards vilifying it and believing the headlines about it, and that's actually part of a decades-long split within the global socialist movement around how to view modern China post Mao and how to view the Deng reforms. a lot of people, Maoists included, hate how China has incorporated capitalist markets, and this has led maybe most self-identified socialists in the U.S. to be against China, and the factions that are against China are really the Trotskyists, like in the World
Hmm.
Socialist website,
Hmm.
the anarchists, the so-called democratic socialists who like Bernie Sanders, though they're also I also interact with a lot of Sanders supporters who follow my work and disbelieve the China stories. So that shows how there's a conflict of narratives, and
Hmm.
and I've come to Marxism Leninism partly because Marxist Leninists have gotten have been most prone to getting the factually accurate line about China.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's because China's Marxist-Leninist,
Yeah,
Marxist-Leninist, Maoist, and now Shiist. So, do you think there's hope for shifting public opinion in the U.S. in favor of China and other anti-imperialist countries? It's seems like a long road a long road to hoe. What do you think?
I followed the work of Caitlin Johnstone. You know Caitlin?
Yeah. Patrice Granville is is a real fan of Caitlin's, and I've read some of her stuff. What do you think?
And Johnstone has helped lay out a sort of blueprint for how she and other journalists in the Western world can help shift public opinion away from the empire's narratives. Uh, I've seen Johnstone hit hard against the anti-Russia narratives and against the anti-Assad narratives, and in recent years there's been a something of a consciousness breakthrough uh, by the alternative media as these journalists have tried to counter the imperialist narratives, and in response to it's clear that this breakthrough has been substantial because governments throughout and corporations throughout the U.S. NATO empire have worked to step up online censorship and deplatform truth tellers.
Hmm. Yeah, they're doing that a lot. I've been censored. All of us have been censored, cut back, cut off, emails that don't arrive. I mean, with all their algorithms and and massive computers, and they're just making it extremely difficult for us. The idea of a free internet is an absolute joke.
Yeah,
The Go ahead.
yeah. I think the way we can shift public opinion is keep redoubling our efforts to spread the truth.
Yeah, I've there's been a lot of talk, about China with CC, with now CGTN, and Russia with RT, Telesur in South America, and Press TV in Iran to try to synergize their efforts. I know that the Russians and the Chinese were just together. Their media desks were together, or their media committees were together just a couple of days ago in Moscow. To try to synergize and combine forces. It's going to take something like that because yeah, the deep state has just has gotten a stranglehold and has had a stranglehold on the media for so long. Well, listen, this is the mother of all questions. What do you think are the prospects for a socialist revolution in the United States?
I think that Well, I see how, as we enter the 2020s, the United States is becoming ever more unstable with
Mm-hmm.
deep inequality, uh, precipitating a looming economic crash that's going to be worse than the last.
Yeah, the 2008 bust. Yeah.
And a lot of people are struggling and want to change, and the bourgeoisie is trying to use whatever methods it can for stopping the overthrow of capitalism, whether that's using force to aggressively suppress dissenters like Trumpian fascists are, or to try to talk the proletariat into not carrying out a revolution like Sanders is doing
Mm-hmm.
with his social democracy agenda. But if the real socialists keep raising class consciousness and building their organizations, they're going to be able to carry out radical change. Because I believe that in the next few years, there's going to be some kind of catalyst event that that provokes an Occupy Wall Street like mass protest movement in the United States. It's already happened in many other countries, and all it will take for such a thing to happen in the United States is a catalyst of some kind, like an
Mm-hmm.
outrage around some specific issue with capitalism that morphs into a larger unrest. When that unrest comes, the communists are going to need to have built the organizational power and have influenced the narrative enough to win a lot of people towards their side, like is happening in
Mm-hmm.
France right now with all these people
Mm-hmm.
carrying pro-communist uh, messages after
Yeah,
the
the yellow
yeah.
vests, the yellow vests. I just republished an article by Raman Mazaheri about the yellow vests. He's the only he's the only really even alternative journalist that's out there every week with him, interviewing him. So yeah, well, I hope you're right. Of course, Occupy Wall Street. It would have to be an explosion so big that it would overwhelm the deep state, the CIA, FBI, that they just couldn't handle it because they obviously went in and destroyed the Occupy Wall Street with drugs and agents and spies and et cetera. So it would have to be something so big that the CIA slash FBI and the media just couldn't handle it. So let's hope that it happens. Maybe not in
Yes,
my lifetime, but in yours. So
I believe it'll be in my lifetime because it's inevitable that America is going to soon enter a period of unrest.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Well, yeah, 2008, we went bankrupt in 2008 because of what I call the rape of the middle class. My wife and I were left with nothing except two suitcases each. That's when we came back to China in 2010. We were almost like economic refugees, and I think everybody's saying this next, and of course bubbles and busts are all very much a part of capitalism, and because they profit off of they profit on both ends. Then this one supposedly could be as bad or worse than 1929. So buckle up. It's going to be exciting the next few years. Hey, listen, back to China. What would you say are the biggest lies the West tells about China? You mentioned the Uyghurs and the social credit system. Is there anything else that you'd like to add?
Yeah, I'd say the Uyghur concentration camp claim is the biggest, and also the social credit, but also more generally, there's the image of China that Americans have been inculcated with, not just this last year, but really throughout their whole lifetimes, about China being a deeply oppressive place with no
Mm-hmm.
freedoms, and the idea that there's no democracy in China,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
the idea that dissent is always stifled.
which is a total lie. I lived there for 16 years, and I've always and I keep saying China has a more vibrant, consensual, participatory democracy than the West by several magnitudes, and there's all kinds of dissent. You can dissent all you want. What they don't want is, in order to maintain social harmony and economic stability, you can't stand in Tiananmen Square with a placard and say that Xi Jinping is a jerk, because it doesn't solve anything anyway. But I've written about this. There's so much dissent. There's pro-Mao groups. There's I hate Mao groups. There's pro-Deng groups. There's I hate Deng groups. There's I hate Xi. I love Xi. I don't like I hate communism. I'm a neoliberal. There's all these different groups.
Yeah.
They're all over the place, and they actually have more of an opportunity to protest or to with social media and clubs and groups and everything. And of course, before the internet, they had mass lying. People could complain to their local representatives, and these were actually looked into. If enough people start complaining about something, the government is very, very responsive. So yeah, I agree. They make it out like it's some sort of totalitarian hellhole, and it's not. It's extremely vibrant and free. So. Let me think. Where are we? What do you think? Because we've got the trade talks going. We've got the sanctions. Huawei. Meng is still a political prisoner in Canada. What do you think will happen with China-U.S. relations in the next decade?
I think that it's hard to say whether a direct war will break out, but what's going to happen is China is going to continue to get stronger, and the U.S. is going to continue to get weaker, particularly in the next couple of years, which is very likely when the recession will happen. China isn't going to bail out the U.S. economy again.
Yeah, like it did last time.
And that's going to continue to created this dynamic of anti-China sentiment in the U.S., and it's even McCarthyist. The way that pro-China voices, or even simply Chinese people in the U.S. have suddenly become suspect.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. It's going to be interesting because people don't like to talk about the fact that when there was the Japanese meltdown in 1988, which was triggered by the United States to recapture all the wealth and power that the Japanese had gained in the 80s, they call it harvesting. China didn't miss a beat. They a couple of months. They kind of slowed down, but they were not affected. The 1997, the Asian Tigers, which was a completely fabricated Western banking rape of Thailand, Korea, etc., and the other Asian Tigers. China didn't miss a beat. They didn't miss a beat during the 2008 meltdown because it has a communist socialist a form of economy. Whoa. And so yeah, it's going to be, if China doesn't bail out the United States like it did in 2008, where they started, buying up, massive amounts of debt, American debt, it could get ugly. We'll see. And that brings me up to one last final question that I think, what do you think that China's market-oriented economic system, is it a legitimate form of socialism?
Oh, it's legitimate if you want to look at it from the way that I think it was either Marx or Engels who assessed that, of course, we won't be able to abolish private property in one stroke, will need to work with the reality that that the bourgeoisie is dominant around the globe as we try to move towards communism. And I don't know if China's I don't even know if China's economy as it exists can be described as socialist, since socialist economy strictly means all the workers own their means of production, and there's
Hmm.
private companies in throughout China, so that's not the case. But uh, the Chinese government is guided by the principles of Marxism Leninism, and as a result, it's been guiding the country in a socialistic direction this whole time. And China's economy isn't technically socialist. Clearly, there have been incredible material benefits for China's people with the expanding social safety net, and I I'm amazed by how you did did you just imply that the Chinese people didn't even experience a decline in material conditions after 2008?
Very, very. They didn't miss a beat. I mean, for about 6 months, the economy shrank a little bit, but no, they didn't miss a beat. I mean, no, they didn't miss a beat. I mean, we arrived here in 2010, and no, they didn't. They immediately started, doing, doing, infrastructure projects. Around housing, building, to keep the economy going. And no, they did not miss a beat. I mean, it was just unbelievable. Yeah, I always say that China is communist socialist because number one, there's no private real estate in China. It's all the dirt is owned by the people. The other thing is there is no private banking in China. There's no private insurance companies.
Yeah,
And so all of those are people owned, although the big banks like Bank of China, uh, the Agricultural Bank of China, all the big banks, do sell stock, but they are limited at 80%, 20%, 20 to 30% of their stock, their value can be sold on the stock market, and it's almost all in the hands of the Chinese, and they control how much any one person can own. So there's at least 70%, if not 80%, publicly owned, and, and China owns the um, all the 100 top heavy industries are all publicly owned. Infrastructure, airports, high speed rail, mining, nuclear, um, you name it, metallurgy, aerospace, airlines, all that is all publicly owned. And so I do consider it, a communist socialist country. And when Deng did his reforms, and it caused a lot of pain for a number of years, but he did that because he realized that China would never be able to go through their capitalist, way to build up wealth before having socialism. They had socialism before they got rich, like the Russians. And so he said, we need to be economically strong to be able to survive against the capitalist West. And so they adopted market oriented capitalist tools. And could China have become a gigantic, continent-sized, DPRK or Cuba, if they had stuck with Maoist economic, probably they probably could, but I'm enjoying seeing China developing 5G and launching rockets every day and having 30,000 kilometers of high-speed
yeah,
rail and
yeah,
and
yeah,
uh,
yeah. Well,
so
we've seen.
you
Yeah,
can't you have to have one or the other. And so I don't, I like the fact that China is economically strong. It has the world's largest economy and purchasing power parity. So if people want to diss China because it's not the former, but by 2050, the goal is to be so wealthy and so powerful and so advanced that they can transition back into a communist socioeconomic model along the lines of Mao. So they are working there. It's just going to take more wealth, because you have to have that wealth behind you to satisfy the socioeconomic needs of the people. So well, listen, what are your projects before we sign out? What are your projects? Have you just, I know you've got your YouTube channel. I know you're writing a lot. Do you, are you thinking maybe writing a book or anything? Or what have you got in the pipeline as far as your journalism?
I'm writing a novel called Comrade Desmore. It's about political commentator guy who's struggling against this oppressive late stage capitalist system in the United States, and at the end of it, he decides to sell out and participate in spreading narratives against America's enemies, like so many American socialists have decided to do. He joins in on the condemnations of China, Russia, Venezuela, Syria, and so on.
And Iran. Don't forget, Iran is socialist too. It's just Islamic socialism, but it's also socialist. Well, that sounds like a cool book. Let me know when you get it written. And I've published 4 books, and I've been through all the pains and agonies of getting books published. I've worked with publishers. I've self-published. So I'll be happy to give you some pointers when you get ready to publish your book. So after I get my next China book, my book number 4 written next year, I want to do some fiction too. I think that's a great way to go. And so maybe you can give me some ideas.
Yeah. We need more self-described fiction than the two ones that Orwell provided.
Yeah. Hey, well, listen, Rainer, this has been a wonderful interview. Thank you. So, a 19-year-old, American who is communist and is shouting it out is an inspiration for me. And I wish that I had caught on before I was 56, or was I 54? 2010, yeah, 56. When I was 56. And so I wished I'd have caught on younger, but better late than never. And I wish you the best of luck. And the next time I'm in California, which may be next year, I'd love to meet you and shake hands, and we can have a coffee together, and maybe I can even meet some of your comrades.
Yes. I'm in Humboldt County, California.
Humboldt, up in the north.
Yeah.
Up in the north. Okay, great. All right. Yeah, that's beautiful. Grass Valley. That's beautiful up there. It's really, really spectacular. Hey, well, listen, Rainer, thank you so much for coming on. I'm going to get this out probably Friday or Saturday, just because I published something yesterday and I've got one more to put in the pipeline. So I'll get you out by this weekend. I'll send it to you, and you can blast it out on your website and Twitter and let's get the word out.
Yes.
All right. Thank you for being an inspiration for the youth of the United States and your Anglo-land in general. I'm really impressed with you, and give you my best comradely regards, and let's see what happens when the meltdown happens. Let's see what happens when the meltdown occurs in the West, because it's going to be very, very ugly.
Yeah.
All right, Rainer, talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
See you later.